Good news you can use whatever home, yeah. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. So listen up, everybody. Listen up, everybody. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life. Yeah.
Hi, this is Beverly Mahone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Boomer Beat. Recently, I had the pleasure of listening to a presentation from Tony Coles. Coles is the president of the Metro division of iHeart Radio and president of iHeart Radio's Black Information Network. What was absolutely fascinating about this interview is the fact that we both went to Ohio University and we both worked for the radio station there. And even though our paths took different routes, we still ended up doing many of the things we love. So I am sharing this presentation with you with his permission. And for those of you who went to Ohio University, you will just be in awe of the success he's had. And for those of you who are in media or considering media for your future, pay close attention because he shares some wonderful nuggets. And I would like to thank Ohio University's Black Alumni Group and Jerry Russo for sharing this special presentation with me. I hope you enjoy it.
There.
So I started out in radio when I was in high school and working at the local radio station in Zanesville. And just a fun fact of, the way life goes, it was not, radio wasn't something that I was considering doing at the time, but I was working at this college, at the radio station locally, and just absolutely fell in love with the medium, fell in love with the industry. And so when I went to OU, that was it for me. Like I knew from that point on that I wanted to do radio. I didn't know what I wanted to do in radio, but I just loved being at the radio station and working at WOUB. Again, it sounds like an overstatement or being overly dramatic, but it was that defining moment for me. The things that I got to experience at WOUB just opened my eyes to a world of possibility. And it was so radically different from the radio station I worked at in Zanesville. And it's rare that you get to go to a college station that is better than a broadcast commercial station, but it was. And the people, the classes that I took at OU, it changed everything for me. And so when I ran out of money, I had to drop out of school, but I had this plan. And by the way, if anybody is remotely thinking, oh, I'll go back in a year and finish, it'll be easier. Don't. Just figure a way to stick it out, because my plan of, okay, I'll go work full-time in radio for a year. That way I'll save up enough money to go back to OU and finish my degree. Long story short, many, many, many years later and many transfers, I finally got a college degree. But yeah, so when I ran out of money, I had to leave OU and ended up taking a radio job in Columbus. That over the years, and I'm very thankful for the path that I've had. It just wasn't the path that I originally thought I was going to, but worked in Columbus for a number of years, moved to Indiana to be in radio, and then made a dramatic leap from working in Fort Wayne, Indiana to New York City, which is not your typical market path in media. But I was very, very blessed to work in New York for a number of years, and then transferred to some radio stations that we owned in Los Angeles, worked in LA for about 5 years, and then decided that I wanted to get more in a senior management track. So I took a position in Seattle, Washington, And then I joined the company that is now iHeart Media and moved to Portland, Oregon, and oversaw a number of radio stations on the West Coast. And then after Portland, I moved to Chicago. And, this is the longest in my radio career I've been in one spot. So I've worked in Chicago, both with the local radio stations and then with our corporate office. I've been there for 15 years now to be a student.
Awesome.
If you want to take advantage of the opportunities that change creates, it means constantly educating yourself, not just on, new technology and new approaches, but educating yourself on the industry and the business, and always understanding not where things are, but where they're going and what it's going to take for you to be there. And I probably spend 3 to 4 hours a week, whether it's reading, whether it's attending sessions, whether it's going to conferences, because the world that I am in, I'm responsible for not only, technology, but revenue, content, all of those things. All of those things are changing and evolving so quickly. And I just have to be, in the mode that I will forever be a student. So it's, we have a lot of work to do. That's the toughest challenge. I would love to think that the diversity issues are going to be solved soon. I don't think that they are, but it is why I get excited every day about what I do at BIN, because we were created, networks like BNC, they were created primarily because there was a lack of newsroom diversity. And there were so many stories about our community that were never being told. And, in the research that iHeart did before we launched the network, we saw that part of the dissatisfaction that people had with news was they didn't see or hear anyone like themselves, and they couldn't relate to a lot of the stories that were being covered. And so I think that because you have networks and organizations that have now placed this focus on, we are going to address the newsroom diversity issue, I see the stats going up, not as fast as I'd like them to, but it's all about the pipeline. Too many managers leaned on the, I'd love to have more diversity, but I can't find anybody. They weren't looking that hard, but we're making it easier for them to find talent because we have taken on the challenge of growing and developing talent. So it's a work in progress. It is, but I think that with each generation, it's getting better, and that excites me.
So Tony, before the call, you remember we were talking about this issue in the WOUB newsroom and how we hope that diversity will continue to grow. And can you tell them what you said about the role that you feel like students need to have in making that change?
Yeah, you have to participate in it. A lot of times people say, oh, well, you don't have programming that interests me. You don't have opportunities that interest me. And this sounds horrible, but no one's going to do it for you. At least that's been my experience. People can say, oh, I want more newsroom diversity. They're not going to expend the energy to do it. So it's forcing yourself into rooms. It's forcing yourself to have the voice and be the voice and create those opportunities. Excuse me, I certainly think that things are much better for your generation, and you're going to have opportunities that I never had. I had to create those, but it certainly doesn't mean that you're not going to have your share of challenges. There are going to be a lot of those. And over my career, what I've seen is there are people who throw their hands up and say, well, I'm not going to participate because, nobody cares. I have always opted to be the one that it's like, well, I care, and I'm going to make this happen. And so I've taken jobs at radio stations that had zero interest to me. Not because the job was interesting, but because I just felt compelled that if I don't do this, no one else is going to have an opportunity. And so I've just really tried to make it my mission. And, I always hate making myself sound older than I am, but I've also accepted that, over time, I'm now in a spot where, as I've moved up, I have more and more responsibility, and I take that very, very seriously, that I have to create those opportunities. But what matters most to me is that I'm also grooming people and putting people into positions that hopefully one day they will replace me, and they will have that same kind of burning desire to make a more equitable environment. So force yourself into those rooms, even if you don't feel like you're welcome there, and even if it feels like it's not of interest to you. It's your job to make things interesting.
Question is, how do you think it, from your role where you sit at iHeartMedia, how do you think AI is going to change the industry?
That's a good question. It almost feels like a setup, and you and I didn't even talk about this. AI is absolutely fascinating and terrifying to me. Them, and, I'm trying to use that technology for what they're doing. But we have a market where I feel like we don't have enough voices in our newscast doing actualities and things like that. We can't afford the staff there to do it. And this isn't on the BIN side, this is on my markets group side. And so we've been having conversations about how can we get more voices on the air, and AI can enable us to do that. So I think that there are some great things from a content standpoint that AI can do. So it's fascinating to watch. But again, that goes back to being a student of the business. If you had told me that one day I'd be working with data scientists on how to make a jock sound like he's in the studio when he's not, I never would have fathomed that. But it's because I've had to learn these things. Make sure that as you come into contact with people, both while you're at WOUB and after you leave WOUB, that you maintain healthy relationships with them. Not because you want them to get you a job, but you never know one day if you can be of value to them or they can be of value to you. Absolutely right. You never know just how long people's tentacles are, and that's in a good way and a bad way. I have certainly learned, unfortunately, earlier in my career, I was much more of a hothead and emotion driven person, and so I burned more than one bridge early on, and I regret that. And I also learned, wow, it's amazing how many cars have traveled over that bridge. But at the same time, also from a good standpoint, when you are a good person and you treat people well, you never know how far that's going to go. So yes, watch those relationships, and it doesn't matter how many people you think, oh, I'm never going to cross paths with them again. You would be amazed at how many times you'll cross paths in your life. But it's about the relationships and the foundation that you form during this time. And so I will always look back on my time at OU and at WAUB with such fondness and appreciation. And the further you get away from it, I think the more you appreciate it. And so I'm just excited for this group, because it's like I'm sure you've already heard it. You have your whole lives ahead of you. But I think that it's a really exciting time in media, and it's changing so quickly. And to be a part of that is reality is anything that you want in life is going to be 10 times harder than you ever imagined it was going to be when you started. It was going to take 10 times as long to achieve your goal. And but the philosophy or the mindset behind it is anything that you want is going to be 10 times harder. But when you achieve it, it's going to be 10 times greater than you ever imagined. And if you know that, and if you to adopt that mindset going in, why not set your goals 10 times higher? Because if you're going to have to work just that hard, why not have loftier goals? And so
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this very special edition of the Boomer Beat. And remember this, you have gifts to give the world. So find your voice and prosper. See ya.
She got that good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life.